Hello students. So in the last lecture we discussed how the joint posterior distribution of the normal parameters can be derived assuming that the parameters have prior distribution as non-informative prior. So now let us see an example where the distribution can be actually used. So this example deals with observations coming from normal distribution, but there is a slight change. The observations were not recorded as they were, instead they were rounded to the nearest integer. So for example 10.7 became 11, 10.2 became 10 and so on. So here we have 5 observations 10, 11, 12, 11 and 9, and now since the original observations are assumed to follow normal distribution with mu and sigma square, so the rounded observations will also have parameters as mu and sigma square. So there are two approaches to analyze this data. So assuming a non-informative prior for mu and sigma square and assuming that these rounded observations are actually unrounded observations and they represent a data from normal mu sigma square, we can compute the posterior distribution of mu, joint posterior of mu and sigma square. So this is the first approach. The second approach involves computation of actual probability distribution of these rounded observations. So how do we compute it? So suppose x follows normal mu sigma square and y is the rounded value of x. Then y will be a discrete random variable and the probability mass function of y will depend on mu and sigma square. So for this data we can compute the joint probability mass function of yi's where y1 is 10, y2 is 11 and so on. So now using the PMF of y, then we can compute the posterior distribution of mu given sigma square conditioning on y, and so we can compare ultimately what is the change in the two posterior distributions and do we need to actually consider the approach of rounded measurements. That is, do we need PMF of y or is it enough to treat these observations as unrounded observations and follow the usual procedure? So this is the question we plan to answer through this example. So I hope the question is clear to you. Let me repeat. It is as if we have a rounded data coming from normal distribution. So we'll treat the rounded observations as if they are unrounded observations and we'll follow the normal model. That is the first approach, and the second approach is find the PMF of the actual rounded observations and then find the posterior distribution and try to make the conclusions regarding the parameters. So if the conclusions differ drastically, then we will have to consider our reconsider our decision of treating the observations as unrounded measurements. So let us try to answer this one by one. So the first question is, pretend that the observations are exact unrounded measurements and simulate a sample of 1000 rows from the joint posterior distribution. Then the second question is, write down the correct posterior distributions for mu sigma square, treating the measurements as rounded. Then the third question is, by computing the correct posterior distribution on a grid of points, simulate a sample from this distribution. And then lastly, how do the correct and incorrect posterior distributions for mu compare? Answer this question by comparing posterior means and variances from the two simulated samples. So now let us see how we can proceed. So suppose the first approach, that is assume that the observations are unrounded. So we have observations on x where x follows normal distribution with mean mu and variance sigma square. So the posterior distribution is proportional to the joint distribution of x's mu and sigma square. So it will be like this. This we have already discussed in the previous lecture. So this will be the marginal posterior distribution of sigma square like this. So it is a inverse gamma distribution with parameters n minus 1 by 2 and n minus 1 times a square by 2, where a square is nothing but the sample variance. So now the aim is to generate observations from joint posterior distribution of mu and sigma square. Now in the previous lecture we had noticed that the joint posterior distribution can be broken as conditional posterior distribution of mu given sigma square and marginal posterior distribution of sigma square. So keeping this in mind, we can simulate observations from the posterior distribution. So the first step will involve simulating observations from the marginal posterior distribution of sigma square, that is simulating observations from inverse gamma distribution. And the second step will involve, once we have the sample on sigma square, use those as the realized observations, and then these values can be used in the variance of conditional variance of mu. So suppose the first value which is observed, or the sampled value of sigma square is say sigma 1 square, then we can generate an observation from normal distribution with mean x bar and variance sigma 1 square by n. So that will be our observation, our first observation on mu. Similarly, taking the second sample value of sigma square, we can generate one observation from the respective normal distribution, that will be the second observation on mu, and so on. Now let us see how do we generate observations from inverse gamma. Now, because the name itself suggests that the distribution is inverse gamma distribution, we can easily use the fact that inverse gamma is generated by reciprocating the gamma random variable. So if we want to simulate observations from inverse gamma distribution, we can simulate observations from the gamma distribution with the same parameters and then can take their reciprocal. So the reciprocal observations will be the observations coming from inverse gamma with the same set of parameters. So let us follow the procedure which we have discussed now. So x, the values I am storing them in x. These are the observations. Then the sample variance I am storing in S2. Then n is the number of observations. So that will be nothing but length of this vector. Now in A, I am storing the parameter, that is n minus 1 a square by 2. So I have stored it in A, and the second parameter which is n minus 1 by 2 I have stored in B. So now in P I am generating observations, 10 raised to 5 observations from gamma distribution with shape B and rate A. So why 10 raised to 5 when we are told to generate only 1000 observations? So I just wanted to have a better comparison, so I am going for a larger sample size. But it is okay if you generate only 1000 observations. So the reciprocal of this P will be the sample from inverse gamma. So I am storing these values in the variable sigma dot sample. Now once I have the values of sigma, now I will generate sample from normal distribution. So either you can write a for loop, or the shortcut is like this. So generate 10 raised to 5 observations from normal distribution with mean x bar and variance and standard deviation which is equal to root of sigma by n. Now sigma values are stored in sigma dot sample, so square root of sigma dot sample by n. So what this command does is, for every value of sigma, one value from normal distribution with mean x bar is generated, and it is treated as the first value in the vector mu dot sample, and this procedure is repeated for all the values of sigma dot sample. So now let us have a look at the histogram of mu. So see, this is how the histogram looks. It is a lot concentrated now, around 10. You can see the mean is around 10, the median is also around 10. So let us look at the summary. So the first quartile is 10.227, the third quartile is 10.979, the median is 10.6 and the mean is 10.6 again. So it establishes the fact that it is actually a normal sample. Now the variance is 0.523172. Notice that this is a marginal variance, even though we sampled observations from mu given sigma, because we are generating 10 raised to 5 observations. So we are sampling over, it's a huge size. 10 raised to 5 is a huge size. So we are covering almost entire possible range of mu, that is real line, and so this will be almost same as the unconditional variance of mu. In the discussion which we had in the earlier lecture, we have considered only conditional variance of mu, which is sigma square by n. We have not considered marginal posterior distribution of mu, which we will discuss in the coming lecture. Then now let us look at the sigma properties of the sigma sample also. Now for inverse gamma distribution, I have computed the population mean and population quartiles. Notice that since here the value of B is simply 2, so the variance, that is population variance, does not exist. To have the value, to have the variance existing, we must have B larger than 2, which is not the case here. We have the parameter exactly equal to 2. So for this inverse gamma distribution, variance does not exist. So we cannot compare uh, the simulated sample based on the variance. That is, we cannot compare sample variance of sigma square with population variance of sigma square, since the population variance doesn't exist. So instead, I have compared them with the quartiles. So let us first compute the population mean of sigma square, which is A into gamma B minus 1 upon gamma B. So in general, the expectation of sigma square raised to k is A times gamma of B minus k upon gamma of B, provided that B minus k is greater than 0, means provided that B is larger than k. So expectation of sigma square, that is expectation of sigma raised to 4, does not exist in this setup. So mean is 2.6. Now let us look at the summary of the sample which we have generated. So the mean is 2.5965, which is almost same as the population mean. So why we are doing this? Why are we checking this? So that we are sure that we have actually generated random sample from the target distribution. So here the target distribution was inverse gamma. So how do I know whether I have actually generated sample from inverse gamma, whether the sampling procedure was right or wrong? So there are simple ways to check this. Either look at the histogram, or you can look at the quartiles and you can compare the population quartiles with the sample quartiles, or you can compare the mean and variance with the sample population mean and variance with the sample mean and variance. So there are various ways to judge whether a simulated observations are actually coming from the target distribution or not. So here I have compared them through quartiles. So look at the population quartiles here for sigma square. It is 0.9662 for the first quartile. Then the median is 1.5475. So it's a skewed distribution. Then third quartile is at 2.71. Maximum is 463. See, if you reduce the sample size, this maximum will be a lot lesser, because we are generating a sample of size 10 raised to 5, which is quite large. So we are able to cover the tail regions also. That is even rare observations, the region which carries less probability, that region also gets covered when you simulate samples. By covered, I mean that observations which belong to uh, the range of sigma square, which is really less likely to occur, those sample also are generated if the sample size is very large. So now let us compute the population quartiles for sigma square. So now notice that this is an inverse gamma distribution. So if eta p is the quantile of pth quantile of inverse gamma, then eta p is same as 1 upon xi 1 minus p, where xi is the quantile 1 minus pth quantile of gamma distribution. So using this relationship between the quantiles of gamma and inverse gamma, I have computed population quartiles for the inverse gamma distribution. So here are the population quartiles. So the first quartile is 0.9655, then the second one is 1.549, then the third one is 2.70. So as you can notice, all these quartiles match with those which are obtained from the sample. So we can safely say that we generated observations from inverse gamma distribution with parameters A and B. So this was the first method. We did not use any package for generating random sample from the posterior distribution. So the second option is that we can use a package which is very popular and used by many people. The package is developed by the author himself, that is Jim Albert. So the title of the package is LearnBase. It's a very useful package and we would be using this package quite often throughout this course. So this there is a function called sim contour in the LearnBase package. So what it does is it generates random samples from a joint posterior distribution of two parameters. So the joint distribution needs to be specified on a grid. This function SimContour has two arguments. The first argument is log f. So this argument is actually the logarithm of the PDF from which posterior PDF by the PDF we mean posterior PDF from which the sample is to be generated, and the second argument is limits. So these arguments actually here the lower and upper limits of the variables whose log PDF is defined in log f are specified, and then the third argument is the data, that is nothing but the observations, that is x in our case, and it indicates the data used for computing the posterior distribution. So that this is fine. And the last argument is m, which is size of the simulated sample. So another function normal chi2 post can be used to compute the logarithm of the above posterior distribution. Okay, so how are we going to proceed? This was the introduction of the SimContour command. This same introduction is available in the help of the SimContour command. So what you have to do is load the package, first install the package learn base, then load the package and then look at the help files. So let us see how this command is to be used to generate observations from the joint posterior distribution. In the earlier setup, we had generated mu and sigma square separately. We first generated sigma square, then we used those values of sigma square to generate mu, so that finally we have paired observations. So these paired observations were treated as the observations coming from joint posterior distribution. Now here in this case we are directly using command SimContour, where the first argument is normal chi2 post. So what is this normal chi2 post? So this is again a function, and what this function does is that when non-informative prior is used for normal parameters, then the posterior distribution, we know the kind of form it takes. So the normal chi2 post, what this function does is it computes the logarithm of the posterior distribution of normal parameters, assuming non-informative prior for the parameters. So what you have to do is simply specify this function, and then now the second argument was to specify the limits. So the first argument we have covered, that is log f. So this function normal chi2 post function computes the logarithm of the posterior distribution from which the sample is to be generated. Then the second argument is limits. So we have to specify the limits of mu values and sigma square values. So here I have taken the limits as 1 to 20. These limits are obtained by considering the quantiles. So what I have done is I have tried to find the 1% and 99% points for both the posterior distributions, that is conditional posterior distribution of mu and the marginal posterior distribution of sigma square. So I observed that it was around 0. The 1% point for inverse gamma distribution was around 0.07. So to be on safer side, I took it 0.001, and similarly this was around 10, 15 or 20. So to be on the safer side, I have taken this as 30. So these limits, you can try changing these limits and see what happens. So then the next one is, the next argument is the data. So here our data is stored in the vector x. Notice that this data should be a data frame. So that's why I have first declared x is equal to data dot frame x. Okay, and finally the sample size. So the sample size is 10 raised to 5. So if we run this segment, so I have stored this sample in the object snew. So the object has two elements there. Snew $x will contain the values of mu, and snew $y will contain the values for sigma square. So summary, I am looking at the summary of snew. So look at the summary. The mean is 10.6. The third quartile is 10.98. The first quartile is 10.219. So let us see whether this summary is similar to what we had in the earlier simulation procedure. So look at the summary of mu dot sample. The first quartile is at 10.2, median 10.6, third quartile is 10.9. So here 10. Remember the numbers. So 10.2, 10.6, 10.9. So almost same. Okay, now the variance is 0.48. Variance of this is 0.4815 and earlier the variance was, let us have a look, 0.52. So not much different, they are close. Similarly, the summary of S nu dollar y, it gives you the first quartile 0.91, the median is 1.49, third is 2.64. So let us see if we get it. So we had 0.96, 1.54 and 2.7. So not bad. So they are close to the population values. Now look at the histogram. So of mu's generated by using this sim contour command. So the histogram looks like this. Then for sigma square, the histogram looks like this. Okay, so this was the first approach. Now let us consider the second approach. So what is the second approach? So treat the observations as the rounded measurements. So suppose y is the rounded value of x, where x follows normal with mean mu and variance sigma square. So what will be the distribution of y? So let us consider the second approach. So the PMF of y will be, now what is the chance that y will be equal to k given the values of mu and sigma square? So y will be equal to k. See, we said na, that if the x value is 10.7, I will go for 11. It will become 11. And if it is 10.4, it will become 10. So keeping this in mind, we get the PMF of y like this. So what is the chance that y is equal to k? So it will be same as the chance that x lies between k plus 0.5 to k minus 0.5. So the probability that x lies between k plus 0.5, sorry, k minus 0.5 to k plus 0.5 is same as the will be actually equal to the standard normal CDF at point k plus 0.5 minus mu by sigma minus the standard normal CDF at point k minus 0.5 minus mu by sigma. So I hope you have understood this. So this will be the probability distribution of y. So now we have 5 values of y. So the joint PMF of these yi's will be, because 11 we have observed twice and then we have observed 10 and 12 and 9. So the probabilities will be P10, P11 square, P12, P9 by sigma square. So now how do we get the posterior distribution? So the posterior distribution is proportional to the joint distribution. So the posterior distribution will be proportional to this. How do we get this 1 by sigma square? So notice that this 1 by sigma square is nothing but the non-informative prior distribution assumed for mu and sigma square. So this will be the joint distribution of yi's multiplied by the prior distribution of mu and sigma square. So this is how we get the joint distribution of yi's, mu and sigma square. Now the posterior is proportional to this. So up to this we can reach. Notice that it will be really difficult to get the exact posterior distribution, because here every value, here P10, P11, P12, P9, all these values are functions of mu and sigma square, and in fact they are complex functions of mu and sigma square. So using the usual methods, we won't be able to simulate observations from this kind of joint posterior distribution. So we have used, we are going to use the uh, function available in LearnBase to simulate observations from this type of joint posterior distribution. So let us first, so how do we do this? So let us see how it can be done. So let us first compute logarithm of this posterior distribution and store these values in the PDF and store these values somewhere. So let us define a function log PS PDF. The function, what the function does is it computes the value of uh, joint posterior distribution of mu and sigma square. So for this, to compute the joint posterior distribution, we will first need a function to compute the PMF of y, the conditional PMF of y. So let us first store these values in y, then n will be the length of y. Now the function PMF y, what it does is it computes this value. standard normal CDF at point k plus 0.5 minus mu by sigma minus standard normal CDF at point k minus 0.5 minus mu by sigma. So how it can be achieved here in the function? So we have two terms. The first term should be standard normal CDF at point k plus 0.5 minus mu upon square root of sigma 2 with the parameters 0 and 1, and the term 2 is the same at point k minus 0.5 minus mu. Now notice that the function, in order to compute these values, I am going to need k, I am going to need mu, and I am going to need sigma square. So I make k, mu and sigma square as arguments of the function PMFY. So what the function has to do now is return the term 1 minus term 2, which will be nothing but the probability distribution of y. So the PMFY function computes the probability distribution of y at point k, assuming that the parameters are taking these two values. So now let us proceed towards the computation of logarithm of the posterior distribution. So how it can be done? So the logarithm of the posterior distribution is computed in the function log PS PDF. So log PS PDF is equal to function, and it has two arguments. So the first argument is beta and the second argument is data. So why do we need beta argument? So the beta argument covers the values of parameters, and data argument, so this argument covers the data on whose basis the posterior distribution is to be computed. So suppose mu is the first element in this vector beta, that is vector of parameters, and sigma 2, that is sigma square, is the second element of the vector of parameters. Then now how do we proceed? So suppose we are going to compute the logarithm of the posterior distribution. So suppose let us store it in log p. So log p is, we have initialized the vector. Now what we are doing is, for every I we have 5 values in the data, y1, y2, y3, y4, y5. So for every I we are going to compute the logarithm of the PMF of y, right? So logarithm of the PMF of y like this. So log of PMFY at point R with mu and sigma square, where R is nothing but the ith value of y. So data $yi. So this data must be actually a data frame, and so we must extract the values like this. We have to extract the y values from the data like this. So why are we specifying the parameters like this? Why do we have to have beta and why do we have to have data? Can't we make data as a universal parameter so that I can use directly y? So notice that this function log PS PDF is to be used to simulate observations from using the simcontour command, and so the learn base package has certain requirements regarding the function which computes uh, posterior distribution of the parameters. And so the requirements are that the first vector or the first argument of the function must be the set of parameters, and the second argument must be a data frame which includes the data. So we are following the pattern which is needed by the learn base package. What you can do is, for the better understanding, you can try running the R code shared in this file line by line, and you can try making changes in the code. So here it is. So in the loop over I from 1 to n, we are computing the logarithm of the PMF of y simply like this. Now notice that the joint posterior distribution also has one more term, that is upon sigma square. So this also we need to compute. So log of pi will be proportional to log of P10 plus 2 times log of P11 plus log of P12 plus log of P9 minus log of sigma square. So this minus log of sigma 2 I have considered here. So ultimately the function log PS PDF will return sum of log p, where log p is a vector which contains logarithm of the PMF of y for every observation, and minus log of sigma square. So this function is going to give us the logarithm of the posterior distribution of mu and sigma square conditioned on y. So now this is how we are going to use the SimContour command to generate observations. So for this, we must give some limits for mu and sigma square. Here I have given the limits as 6 and 614 for x, that is mu, and 0.01 and 15 for sigma square. This was just a trial. You can try giving different limits for this, or you can give the limits which are same which we have given earlier. That is, you can give the limits as 1 and 15 and 0.001 and 30. So you can also try doing this. So if you do this, then I am storing these values in S. So we will get observations on mu stored in $x, and we will get observations stored on sigma square stored in $y. So this variance, we need not look at the variance, it is meaningless, but here I have already computed it, so let it be there. So see, this is the histogram of mu sample from the joint posterior distribution of mu and sigma square, assuming that the observations are rounded measurements. So this is the histogram. Now we were told to compare both the approaches. So similarly, this is the variance, this is the histogram of sigma square. So now let us try merging the two histograms. Let us see what happens. So what I have done is, here I have tried to merge both the histograms of mu. So see, so from the two different posterior distributions, we had simulated observations on mu. So, and then I have put the histograms, both these histograms in the single graph. As you can notice, there is hardly any difference in the two histograms. So what is the meaning of this? There is not much of a difference in the histogram, means that if you look at the sample properties of mu based on these two samples, they will match. So if you look at the mean, they will be almost same. If you look at the variances, they will be same. Quartiles, quantiles, they will be same. So ultimately the conclusion is that since there is not much of a difference in the properties of uh, mu based on the two samples, either of the approach can be used. So because the second approach, that is using y's to generate to compute posterior distribution, is a bit more complicated than using the normal distribution to compute the posterior. So we will go with the first approach. So even if the data are rounded, it is good enough to treat the observations and as unrounded and follow the usual procedure.